Me? I did. I got them all cut.
Yes, very nice. I need to.
So they really cut it off. It was great of them. All right, so I think I'm gonna turn that off and I'm going to record.
Yeah, I hit record
Oh,
already.
you already hit us. Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Okay. All
Hi,
right. I want
Kathleen.
to stop recording. No, I do not. Okay. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Dessert and a Movie. Um, I'm really excited to talk about this film tonight. I think many times when we do this, I forget to ask you, what did you think about the film? So maybe if we could do our famous hand signal, like we give it a 5 or a
Oh,
4
like
or a
that.
3.
Five being the best.
5 is the best,
Yes.
and this is like I want to hit somebody. Why did you make me watch it?
Four,
Yeah, how did we feel about it? Just if
four,
you could just say how you.
four
Good,
and a
I
half.
like that.
good. Yeah, I thought it was very charming, and we're really excited to have Barbara Anthony Twarog with us tonight. She is a professor emeritus from the University of Kansas. We were discussing before you all joined us her career in physics and astronomy as a woman, um, a little bit outside the box of my vintage anyway. Women were not necessarily into such manly professions when I was a young girl, so we're really glad that she's here. And we always want to give a shout out to Capital Federal for, hi, is that a person of note with you, Kathleen?
Yes.
Hi, person of note. Um, he was a person of note in another Zoom we did. We want to thank Capital Federal for helping us put this whole program together, and also Sharon and David Katzman and their foundation that help keep the lights on, keep the good times coming for Retroactive. We're very grateful. Um, and I want to ask you what your dessert is. I see Jack is eating. How unusual. He probably has creme brulee of some kind. But okay.
Even
Oh, look at that. He's got
Alien
alien cookies. Very nice. Okay. I'm personally taking their easy way out. I have some.
Easter candy.
I have brownies, but they're out of this world.
They are,
Oh,
well, they're
very
very
nice.
cute.
Those are the
they're
ones from Toy
aliens.
Story, the aliens.
I have apple, carrot, kugel with sliced almonds.
Ooh, that sounds delicious.
You know
It
what that
is,
is.
and a Moroccan, and I had a Moroccan
It's in a
thing. It's very citrusy,
Tupperware thing.
but this is
Sounds
good.
delicious. That sounds wonderful. Well, we probably want to work on the uh, thing at hand, which is to talk about our film that we watched. And but before we do get into the film, I thought maybe Barbara would share with us a little bit about her work at KU and tell us a little bit about yourself and what I'm sure I understand the fascination that would take me to study astronomy and the constellations, but just tell us a little bit about your work and your work at KU, and then we're going to take it from there. And thanks everybody for coming tonight with
Thank
your
you.
desserts.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, my husband and I came as a package deal in 1982 and retired almost that way too. So we came and we've collaborated on work, which I don't really recommend in a marriage, but it's it's been okay. So we always had somebody to work with. We studied stars, so we were of the more active kind. So we would go to telescopes wherever, most often in Chile or Arizona.
Mhm.
A lot of time out in the dark back in the old days without a lot of technology. Really didn't see anything. Didn't know anybody who did either. So um, not a lot of predilection to look for extraterrestrials in or UFOs among astronomers. There really just never has been. But yeah, I retired in 2018, so I've been working a little interactive with colleagues still in the department. I've been doing some writing, so that's my new gig, and that's hard too.
You know, when I see films, some of the ones I remember is some astronomers sitting somewhere in the middle of nowhere, trying to stay awake and they're watching something and suddenly they say, "What is that?" And then they're clicking and suddenly we discover that a meteor the size of, New York is headed to Earth or a strange blip happens or something like that. You're telling me it's not that exciting? Or at least.
Not very often. First part of what you said is true. You tend to be in the middle of nowhere because
Uh-huh.
eyes are dark and
Barbara,
you
what did you think of the film?
what did I think of the film?
Yeah.
I liked the film, but I think it was much more about people aging and being friends through that than really anything about extraterrestrial life. And the character
What did you
Jules,
think about the extraterrestrial? He never, or it never spoke and was the receptor for
exactly.
everything.
He was literally a blank slate in the interactions between people. I mean, he was expressionless, colorless almost, sexless, didn't really talk. The only thing he did actively was draw cats, which
Yeah.
did
And eat
use-
apples.
and use
and
them
eat
to
apple.
fuel a spaceship.
Yeah.
And turned very blue when he was upset.
Yes.
Yes. He had some superpowers. We'll have to talk about that. My husband was in law enforcement and I kind of enjoyed uh I've never seen anybody's head blow up.
Unusual. Yeah.
And they're trying to ask this woman,
Barbara,
how did
did
his
you
head
give
blow
her,
up? How did you do that? So
did you hear or did you get in your profession many people talking about extraterrestrials or life outside our universe?
Well, our universe is everything, so it would have to be inside our universe, but outside our solar system, which is really small.
Right.
I mean, everybody's looking for the prevalence of planets, which is really, really high. We know that now, but we didn't know that 30 years ago. First planet was discovered 30 years ago outside our solar system, and now there are, I think, 6,000
Wow.
discovered
Wow.
exoplanets, but very, very few of them like Earth. But people are interested in exploring all the ways that life might exist in ways that don't look like life to us. Certainly not advanced life. There may be lots of it, and if they're not building radio receivers and transmitters and sending messages to us, it's really hard to know that they may or may not be there. And so far, nothing firm, but we're learning a lot about planets, really even about our own planetary system as we study all these others.
When I said the universe, they talk now about a big bang or black holes sucking up everything, and that there's possibly a universe beyond the universe, that there may be something out there.
Yeah, I mean, that's beyond what I can say because I can only study the one we got.
Right.
I kind of like Neil deGrasse Tyson's statement where he said, there's no evidence that we know of life. There's so much science yet to learn. But in understanding the vastness of the universe,
Right.
that is so much of it is beyond our knowledge or our attainability or whatever, you can't discount anything. So what are the percentage odds that there's some, it's not a ridiculous number
No,
if you look at that, but there's no evidence that within what we've seen so far, anything near that there is. And I think that's a really healthy attitude. I like that.
he probably
was-
said something like absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. We don't know
Yeah.
what we don't know. 6,000
Right,
planets sounds like a lot, but there are 100 billion stars in the galaxy.
Well, he
There was-
also quips that
Well-
if, oh, go ahead, Shelley.
I was gonna say there was some excitement on
Yep,
the news
true.
today even about an exoplanet that was determined to have, I think, two sulfur-based chemicals in it that indicated a high chance of there being life on that planet. But of course, That's the first report. You have to have confirmation, you have to have all sorts of other, scientists take a look and agree before you say, yeah, we found life.
And yeah, and
They didn't say
how
that.
do you define life, you know?
Right.
We're
Right.
always seeing
Life.
octopusy-like
Mhm.
tentacled beings and all of that, and our imagination is probably very limited as to what life could look like.
That's true.
Yes, we were talking before we opened up the Zoom about that report today that something was determined, and although Barbara had a spin on that. Well,
There was pushback early today and through the day. I checked my colleague's Slack feed earlier today, and it's not a strong result. Um, it was a detection, a not quite 3 sigma detection. Phil, that's for you. You'd laugh at that. Not a firm detection of a molecule that, as far as we know on Earth, it only gets made in biological environments. But we don't know a whole lot about chemistry in a really different non-biological
Right.
environment, because we kind of know chemistry where we are.
right.
So that's not it. It is not evidence for life. It is a suggestion so far.
Something that looks like us. Some trace even, something that might, I don't know, just well, it certainly was nice to think about something a little bit larger than what's going on. And think about the stock market. I think it was almost a gift from the news to get our minds up and out, which maybe you want to show us your thing that you brought.
Oh, I just have one graphic. I didn't want to overdo
Yeah,
that.
we checked on that earlier.
Oh, we love graphics. I love graphics. Ooh.
I just wanted to, Laurel asked me a couple of leading questions during the week, and one of them was, oh, how do we know any of this stuff? How do we map any of this stuff? And this is probably an end result of a lot of work. It's a graphic because it's a view of our galaxy from the outside, and we are certainly not able to do that. But that's kind of what our system looks like. And then down here, but is what it might look like from the side. And we look at lots of other galaxies and sort of fit ourselves into the zoology of all of those systems by what we observe. But it has to begin with taking that 2-dimensional picture of the sky that we see and making it a 3-dimensional picture. So we have to know that we have to be able to figure out the distances to the things we look at. And I would say most astronomers spend a lot of time doing just that by a lot of different means. But once
That
a lot of people have
supermassive
done it,
black hole right there in the middle. You want to
there
talk about
probably
that?
is. Yeah, there is.
There really is.
There really is.
So is it sucking all of us in?
No, it'll only suck what comes really close to it, and it's actually been on a diet for quite a while. It
Good.
doesn't have a lot of matter near enough. Black holes don't suck. They just, you have to get really close, and then things just fall in.
Okay, we'll stay away.
And I hope
Just stay
everybody
away.
can see down there our solar system. There's the "you are here."
We are
Just to
here,
kind of,
right?
yes, to
About halfway out.
put you in
I like that
perspective.
little stuff, examples of star birth areas.
That's where you and your 401k are right now. For what it's worth, okay? Which
It puts
I
that in
love.
perspective too, I guess.
Yeah.
Our solar system is very good looking.
It's lovely.
We are. We may
Very
be the most
beautiful.
beautiful in the universe for all we know.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. So I think we've kind of decided that, I love that perspective that you brought to it, that, what we call life, well, you have to have this and you have to have that, and these, who knows what's out there? Who knows what the chemistry is? Who knows what's happening? It's almost like meeting your cousin from Peru, I mean, life is so different. just even here on our planet between people. And just to think of other places, what's going on. It is thrilling. It really is thrilling. I think it's really fun.
I thought,
So I guess we need to
I
talk a
thought that,
little bit about
yeah, Ben
Jules.
Kingsley was fabulous.
Yes, yes, I didn't even recognize him.
I
He was
At first,
amazing.
he looked so familiar, but
Yeah,
his
yeah,
voice and his affect was wonderful. And I loved seeing Jane Curtin looking crummy, and everybody was just wonderful. And the lady who smiled all the time, but who was really filled with grief. I
yeah.
thought it was just wonderful.
Yeah, it had we talked right Barbara and I were talking a little bit about that on the way before you all joined up, and the movie to go to that talk about that kind of stuff. Of course, I love that, having been once an English teacher and all that, and loving books and novels and writing. Those three people were in the same place in the same room, and they were galaxies apart in every way. And this little being who didn't say one word brought them all together.
They kept
And
saying that the eyes were speaking eyes, but they really
yes,
weren't.
yes,
It was what they chose to see and what they chose to share.
yeah,
But I wondered how they managed that because they didn't they didn't seem blank. Uh, I mean, they didn't seem like, black marbles or something like that. They seemed to be able to convey
It was an
at least,
actor.
at least acceptance. You
Yeah,
know,
little girl or a young girl.
yeah, but I mean that they weren't her eyes. They had something covering them
I thought it was also
whatever,
interesting they kept calling her or it a
or
it,
it.
and yet the genitals, if anything, would be more female than male. And it was just interesting how they assumed it was a guy.
Age range.
Yeah.
True.
yeah. It was interestingly done, and I remember hearing for years. Somebody put an ad in the paper years ago. This may or may not be a story. It might be folklore. Someone put an ad in the newspaper saying, "I will listen to you." You know, $10 an hour. And this person did very well because I like the phrase I heard years ago. A lot of us are hard of listening. Um, I've certainly run into people in bureaucratic offices that are hard of listening. And but to be listened to, that's huge. That's huge. And Jules, or what did Jane Curtin's character want to call him?
Gary.
Barry,
What was it?
Gary.
Barry.
It was
Well,
like Gary, Indiana, wasn't it?
Gary, that's right.
Gary.
Yeah. This Jules person, this being, just let them listen, and once they start talking, everybody's got something to say. It was interesting. Jane Curtin went totally into when she was in the city, and
It,
she had lovers and all this stuff that nobody wanted to, it's like, and she sang, and did all that stuff, and
No, but it
then
was
the
wonderful
other,
But
because he appreciated the singing. She was
yeah,
good.
yeah,
And she got some validation for living in
yeah,
a small town
yeah.
that she feels somewhat trapped in. I also saw parallels with E.T. from a long time ago.
Uh-huh.
The concept of the government as Gestapo coming and knocking on the door,
Right.
and the fears that in E.T. of the guys coming in their in their
Yes.
whites or
That
their
other woman, Sandy, she was reaching out to everybody. She wanted to put a mural on the wall, and she wanted to put up posters so she could get
she
together with
was a
young people.
Pollyanna.
And
yeah.
She was a Pollyanna, we
yeah,
discovered.
she was all
It
over
was
the place.
lovely that she had that smile, but behind the smile, there was sadness. And at
Yes.
one point, we see her being very frightened and sad, and yet she's smiling very
Mhm.
brightly, and she has a great smile. But all of them had surfaces or masks that weren't the real thing. And
Mhm.
I love the ending when he came back for him.
Yeah. That
We
was
Yeah,
good.
we were
we
talking about
assume,
that.
we
What did
assume.
you think at the end, Barbara, you mentioned you were talking about that. What was your spin on the end? He said
I
something like
thought he came back for him, or at least to visit.
Mhm.
No, he
Yeah.
had
But
that smile. He knew he was going to be taken
yeah,
finally, and that he was ready to be taken because he did not want to live in the state he was in.
Yeah, that was I thought he was kind of looked a little bit like happy,
Yes,
like
he did.
maybe
He
he
had a
was going to go with
smile.
him this time. And he went through all of that. I don't know if any of you have gone, we'll turn this into a group hug here, but um, feeling that you're old and, maybe your children are wondering how are you doing and you think you
He
know,
knew he was losing it.
you forget to, you
He
forget
had
to,
what my father had, or what we did for him. He had post-its on things saying, "Is the refrigerator door closed? Is this done?"
Mhm.
He knew he was becoming demented in some way.
Yeah,
Acknowledged it and just didn't want to acknowledge it to his daughter.
right. And then the daughter in the film, tricked him into having the test. I'm going to use three words. I remember my mother, she lived with us for almost 6 years with dementia, and it was fine. But taking her to one of those tests, they asked her, do you know what? She was so good at covering. What county are we living in? And she said, why would I care?
She, oh, she must be
I
related
love the way
to
he
you.
said, "I would have studied for it. If I knew I was going to taking the test, I would have studied."
Why would,
Great
why would I
line.
care? That's so mom, just like,
Great.
so anyway, that was very sweet. I want to ask Barbara a little bit about there they were, the men in black. There were news reports that there was a weather balloon missing, or and then they kind of ramped it up. They said something else was missing. They thought maybe it was not sure what if anybody's seen anything, and of course they were listening all day long
That
in a lower level.
Of the
that was
library.
that was for me the least not that they wouldn't be listening, but if they're listening to all that, but they're totally didn't pay any attention to the guy who reported on 911 that an alien spaceship landed in his garden.
Right, exactly, exactly,
That's
Carrie.
recording, that's the whole time they would have picked up on that much
Yeah.
more.
That's the suspension of disbelief.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, that's how you get a
that
story.
that
so is
and
the
they
view of the
never there
spaceship
was
in the backyard that the neighbors behind them could perfectly well see.
Yeah, I thought that maybe neighbors could, but then I looked more closely.
he was out in the
It is
country.
like
He
a
was on the edge
farm.
of town.
The
Yeah.
things in the back were red barns and outbuildings.
Okay.
Because I
Right.
thought his neighbors are going to see it, but no, he's on a very large acreage, and it was probably a farmhouse at one point, and there was so they
Right. There was a
may not
barn.
have seen it.
Yeah,
I
the
think
neighbors
I'm
aren't.
probably more accepting, but I assumed that there were so many calls and things to listen to that they just finally got to the right one. So I take a film for what it is. I didn't get to analytical, and they finally got to that one, and that's the one they're gonna listen to. You heard so many of the other ones that were ridiculous, but I love the weather balloon because that was the crap that the federal government put up during the supposed situations with the military base. We saw a film about that and whatever, and that's a truism that they said, oh, they were weather balloons because that was their means of having people not be suspicious and at the same time make people think that there really were aliens coming. So I thought that kind of worked with
Mhm.
real history of it.
Mhm.
and it was really well done. And I also, I also love the fact that, first of all, with the dementia stuff, you're, as our LMH programs have told us, you're the last one to know. Dementia is when your family kind of turns you in that you can't drive anymore or you can't do any other things. So that seemed also pretty realistic to me.
Mm.
But I love the fact, and it relates to me to retroactive, is whether you're introverted or whether you're escapist or whatever you are, we all want friends and companionship. And that's why we're here on this little funny screen in a lot of ways, I mean, so it made a lot of sense to me how the movie progressed. That was kind of my take of it. It was in that sense, in the middle of something fictitious, something very realistic.
And they
It was,
become more beautiful with time. I don't know if you noticed that, but the smiley lady finally had her hair down long, and everybody seemed to have improved not just on their inside, but the filmmaker showed it on the outside as well. It was very interesting to me that
they
as
were
they
more relaxed. Yes, so it was a lot to talk about, a lot to think about. I think that I certainly my heart went out to Milton when his daughter wanted him to live someplace where he'd be safe. And I'm not having anybody ask me to be safe, but my sister did buy me a Apple Watch, so when I fall down in Chicago, she'll know. But it's very kind of her. Um, but yeah, and then he wanted to go. Milton wanted to go but then somehow in the course of the film, knowing this little person and watching the crime shows together, whatever they did, and all the apples they shared, he at the end he wanted to have a relationship with his daughter and his son, and he wanted to stay here.
what do you think about the apples?
That was, I think apples are pretty darn tasty. I suppose that.
No,
Universal.
I think it's very purposeful what the director decides to do. I'd love to hear.
Oh,
Jill
yeah.
and Phil, do you have any thoughts?
I wondered if he was gonna get diarrhea. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
lot of apples. And I
I
want to
kept
know
thinking,
what about the dead cats?
Yeah, that was my favorite part.
Don't we
Devoured by
agree?
dead cat.
Thing.
We could power rockets with a few dead cats.
Yeah, I want to meet the person whose brain came up with that, you know?
That was definitely out there. And
Great.
and cruising
it
the
linked,
roads looking for dead cats,
but
that's a
it
awesome.
linked with Curtin and her sacrifice.
Yes.
It kind of put the whole thing on a cartoon level to me, anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they all had to give up something, didn't they? She had to give up her cat who
Yeah.
couldn't even walk anymore. I mean, she sacrificed something for this little being. None of this has anything to do with astronomy, Barbara. I'm so sorry.
I don't think the movie was about that.
No.
As we said at the beginning, it wasn't really about extraterrestrial life or
Right.
what it might be like. It was about what we're like and
Yeah,
how we
Exactly.
approach aging by ourselves
Mhm.
or with each other.
Yeah.
I love the when they come up to the podium at the town hall.
Mhm.
It sounded all
great.
too familiar. Oh, God.
Yeah. A good place to call home. And also we need to have a crosswalk.
You
It's
need
such
to have a,
a
yeah, that's the one that got me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of
No,
course, they didn't sue anybody for freedom of speech, so it was a bunch
Yeah.
Yeah,
of
right.
Sorry, Kathleen.
Well, no, actually, that's how I found out about this movie. I was at a conference in Seattle, and this woman who is the Washington State librarian was there, and we all had dinner with her, and she was talking about this great movie. Well, we started talking about people standing up at public meetings and saying random stuff. And she goes, "Oh, I just saw this great movie on the plane. You should watch it." And then, we talked about the Alien
Oh, I
movie. But
love it.
yeah, that was the segue, was public comment, public meeting. So
And Kathy, this is Nancy. Speaking of librarians, I would like to tell Laurel it's a good thing you have the Apple Watch
Yes,
because my Apple Watch saved my life.
Ooh.
that's what I've
Literally.
heard.
It
Who's
is the best
talking?
purchase I ever made.
Who is talking? This is,
This is
Nancy.
Nancy.
Hawkins.
Nancy, Sherry.
she's not here in the
Yes,
picture, right?
Well,
This is
I
not an
believe-
extraterrestrial, right?
Nancy's a
I
retired
have-
librarian.
Yes, and in fact, Kathleen, is Nancy Pearl still the state librarian in Washington?
No, she's retired now. But I
Oh,
can't
well,
remember
okay.
who is.
I guess we all retired, so
Yeah.
life is good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, thank you, Nancy, about that, because honestly, the same story was told about a relative of hers in Chicago, that he fell down some steps and the watch alerted everybody and they were able to, I mean, he was unconscious, so
Yes, as was I.
yeah, so it did save his life. And so I'm I make jokey jokes, but the truth is
Sure.
it's a very loving thing. And quite honestly, I did find two people here in this town that will be alerted if I fall off the ladder.
Oh,
Good.
Time I fill the bird feeder or wash the windows, so should be good.
What do you
I
think
have
will
a couple
happen?
of astronomy questions for Barbara.
Yeah.
Great.
We had a red moon and a pink moon recently, and where did those colors come from?
I don't, are those just the names or?
I think they called
Yeah,
it the
I went
pink
out, I went
moon.
out and looked at the red moon, took a couple pictures. It was a couple weeks ago.
The
It was
blood
the
moon.
blood moon.
Yeah.
We're talking about the blood moon. Wasn't that a lunar eclipse?
Eclipse.
It's called a paschal moon. Is that right?
That's
P-A-S?
The
That's
one
Easter.
that determines Easter, right?
That's
But
what-
I don't think it was any particular color. If the moon is red, it's because it's in eclipse. And there's just a little bit of sunlight scattering through Earth's atmosphere, and it's usually red. Kind of depends on how smoky or smoggy the
Mhm.
atmosphere is.
And the pink moon this year really was rather pink, although it's when I read up on it, it has to do with a wildflower that grows. A lot of the hunter's moon, the
Mhm.
harvest moon, in September or October, the harvest moon is great because you can work late in the field,
Mhm.
work by moonlight.
August.
The worm moon is coming, and the worms are up and at it. Have you seen the robins running around having breakfast?
Those
On
names
the lawn?
They're
you know.
more about tradition and history and culture than astronomy, but
Right,
that's fine.
right.
What do you think the two women's response will be when he is gone or when the daughter finds him gone?
If he goes.
That would be part two. Jules too.
Yeah, Jules in outer space.
Son of Jules.
I think they'll be joyful. I don't think they'll be.
Yeah. I mean, I found myself going, go, go, go.
I know. I know. As a matter of fact,
Good
when I
minute.
saw that and he wanted them, he did the move for the three of them. I was sitting here alone and I said, yes.
That's kind of out of was it Cocoon?
Cocoon, yes.
Yeah. Same
There's
thing.
a lot of similarities there too.
Yeah.
I was wondering, did anyone have any theories on how they got from the quarry area back home without the men in black, debriefing them or whatever? That was they kind of
Yeah.
glossed over a
That was
chunk.
a little more suspension of disbelief. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if I was dropped off in the middle of the ham quarry over here, it's kind of a long walk to get home. So I don't
He had bars, so I mean they can call Uber, but as far as that goes, but I'm figuring that the NSA guys or whomever is still going to be,
Right.
spending his garden for
That'll be hard to prove,
whatever.
though. There's no proof left.
I love the
Hopefully.
way he said on
Maybe
his
some
phone
molecules.
call,
Yeah.
it
Maybe,
crashed my
maybe some head
backyard. And
exploded.
the important thing is that it crushed his damn azaleas.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
that he refers to it later, it's going to take years for them to
Yes.
come back. And his
Yes.
focus was fascinating. I just thought there was such humor in this,
Mhm.
but it wasn't belly laughs. It was just delightful. Well, I thought so anyway.
Yeah. No, I think
Yeah,
it's
it was going to take them years to recover.
The one thing I thought of in terms of other movies, and it, it's unfortunately kind of a sad thing to look at it, is we're looking from the dementia point of view. In when he made his decision to leave, as I kept thinking of Still Alice. I don't know if any of
Yes,
you have
still,
seen,
I thought
seen
too.
that.
Mm.
And here's somebody who knew what would happen, did everything she could to prevent surviving herself into Alzheimer's, and the doorbell rang, and there she is in a home, not avoiding what she wanted to avoid, which is not knowing who she was, so to speak. And that came back to me very strongly in the movie. So I really like, and that was a terrifically sad movie. But this one had the same message in part, but there was a lot of joy in it. So it was really made a pretty tough message much more enjoyable to watch.
Because it
know.
was about community and finding
Yeah, I mean,
together.
there was a lot of good things in it that, overcame the bad to a degree, if the NSA guys showed up again, that would just kind of kill the buzz, so to speak. So they just decided not to do it.
Probably Elon,
Was my
Elon
feeling,
Musk's
you
guys.
know. Yeah, yeah.
I just finished the Thursday Murder Club's
Oh.
most recent one,
Oh,
the last double
fun.
did I, and it is a little bit about that.
Yes.
There are a lot of similarities with that. I really hope they make some movies with those books because I think it gives age a much better look.
Mhm.
So someone has
anyway,
bought the
I thought-
rights, and I saw something about Ben Kingsley being cast.
Oh, really?
Really?
Yeah.
Again.
Ben
Yeah.
Kingsley.
Yeah.
As which character? The
Yeah,
As Ibrahim.
That'd be great.
Oh.
yeah, what's the
It's all
Netflix
about
series?
writing off the elderly, and the elderly saying, as they're in these I used to call them nursing homes, but they're not now, I guess. But how
Retirement.
they very much want excitement and adventure and sex and all the things that we supposedly leave behind when we're old, but we don't.
No, I don't think we do at all. No.
Well, there's the Netflix series, The Man on the Inside, if you watch that. That's
Oh,
awesome.
yeah.
Oh, tell me
That's
about
good.
Ted Danson is the lead character, and he's kind of hired to go undercover in a retirement community.
Oh yeah, I saw some of
And
that.
it's hysterical. It's really fun. So
It's
I've heard a
called
lot
The
of good things.
Inside.
really
The
good. The
Inside
Man on the Inside.
Man on the Inside. I saw that, but I thought it would be
It's really good. Weirdly, my 32-year-old son suggested we watch it. Recommended by my 32-year-old son. So, but it's fun. It's a really fun series.
Yeah,
So,
it was interesting, just to think about the character Jules for a minute. Like what was he, a male or a female? But I taught fourth grade, of course, after I taught high school, and I didn't feel like I was working hard enough. So I went back to KU, and I was the world's oldest student teacher. And I taught elementary school, but we would study space in fourth grade. And of course, this was 20 years ago, so the space shuttle was really a huge, huge deal. And I took a masking tape and put it on the carpet in our classroom, approximating the size of the thing, and we had all kinds of stuff we did about that. But of course, the first thing the boys and girls want to know is, how do they go to the bathroom? and
Very
someone,
practical.
well, of course, and one of you mentioned, didn't the Jules get diarrhea? Well, we don't know how Jules took care of that, but that made me think of the children always asking, how do they go to the bathroom? And so we always had to talk about how that worked, and
I
the
think it
only
was
other little
symbolism.
vignette I can share is that at the time, a teacher, anyone could get moon rocks, believe it or not.
Oh,
And I saw something somewhere and I followed through, and I was so thrilled um, that we could get moon rocks, and they came in a little case that was all had locks on it, and I think somebody probably carried it, like the Blues Brothers with a head cuffed to his arm or something. And we were allowed to have moon rocks in our classroom for maybe a week, but they were really pebbles. They were just tiny little things. I don't know I'm sure I was more thrilled than they were probably, but I said, these came from the moon, it was so cool. And did anybody ever get to see moon rocks anywhere?
only in
Only in
Air
Washington.
and Space Museum. Yeah.
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 Did anybody not comment upon the apples being a symbolic fruit?
Well, is that the fruit of earth with a creation story, or although it was a
Apple a
tree?
day
Ask
keeps the
questions,
doctor
I
away.
guess. Pardon?
Apple a day keeps the doctor away, she said.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I think it was meant to be symbolic.
Hmm.
You don't just throw that in. It could have been a banana or a kiwi.
Yeah.
But
I don't,
it has
I-
to do with our creation story. And
yeah.
I thought it was very funny
Hmm.
that they did that.
Well, it didn't seem to cause any trouble having it, did it? Not like it did in the creation
So
story.
they all sat down and started eating apples together.
Yeah.
I was watching this right and I got a phone call.
Oh,
And so I was still watching, and
Uh-huh.
I still have 5 minutes to go
oh.
on on it. But I thought it was really interesting, Jules' patience when he needed the cats
Mhm.
and how I don't know if you guys talked about this already, but
No.
how patient he was, just that serenity, or just that, calmness and steadiness. And like, if I needed cats, I would have
Yeah,
to
draw the
take off
pictures
again.
of the cat's
I would
faces.
have been a little more, emphatic or something like I need
I kept
cats.
wondering what the cats were those describing the people back on his homeland, or I was really wondering what they
That
were,
was
and they
out
looked a
there.
bit like
Yeah.
him.
That
Yeah,
was
but he was
so
just kind of
weird.
passing that note as if it didn't have anything behind it, any urgency or any that it
Yeah.
was important, that it
Yeah.
was important.
Didn't Milton say he keeps drawing me pictures of cats and he's such a nice little guy and all that or whatever?
So what do
Yeah.
you think? Do you think that Jules meant to come to Earth? That's why he was in the neighborhood? Or do you think that was a total accident?
He crashed.
Well, he did crash,
No
but he might
kidding.
have been, just zipping past and whoops. Or it could have been he was investigating Earth,
I
from
I
above,
think he
or
was low on cats.
Yeah.
no one gets indeed.
Needed to
I
scrape some
didn't
cats
think
off the
about it
highway.
until we started dissecting the movie, and then you always kind of sometimes over dissect it. So while I was watching it, it never occurred to me, but now it's like, well, how can he look like that on another planet, but have cats for fuel, like a real animal? And it's like, so I immediately want to shut that out of my brain, and I say, well, cats have something in them that is like something on his planet or
Evolution.
something. But when you start thinking about,
Something.
when you think, it's like any movie, when you think about it too much, sometimes you kill the point of the movie.
Yeah.
But it was kind of funny. But yeah, it never occurred to me that he did anything but crash. Was my feeling about it.
Right.
He just
Yeah.
Also, cats
took a wrong turn.
cats were a little bit like him. They have their own kind of quiet.
Quiet independence.
Well, clearly cats have
Also,
evolved
just
on
because
many
he was
planets.
small, was he a
Yeah, we
boy?
know.
Was he a girl? Or was he a child? Or was
Nice.
he a an adult in their ideas.
I don't know. And then they turned into this thing that kind of looked like a big seed or something. I don't know. It was very interesting. And
Maybe
I
that's what his body did to the apples.
that's pretty true. I think to me the part when uh, Sandy was having trouble with that guy who was going to kill her,
Oh,
that was frightening to me.
me too.
And the fact that the guy's head blew up because Jules knew
Yeah.
that it was happening.
Well, I was
ESP.
concerned because they connected through the library.
Right.
That bothered me.
That's going to take me to a different kind of a woo-woo thing, but
It's not good.
the idea of telepathy is being
Yeah.
studied quite a bit, and I've
I
been
thought it was
listening.
because he had a relationship with her,
Yeah,
that it maybe wasn't just the supernatural thing that an alien would have had, but that he suddenly felt something, or she, or it felt something because it had a connection.
it knew what was going on, and it took care of the situation. Um, there was another time in the movie when he got excited about something. I can't remember. Do you
When
remember
the
he?
cat was dying, they were worried. They put the bowl over the head of the cat because they thought his head would blow up. But
Yeah.
instead, when he turned blue, he caused the death very gently.
Okay. Yeah.
I didn't know if he was gonna fix everybody, if the cat was gonna, be able to run around again, if Milton wouldn't have dementia, if everybody was going to get
Oh,
There
better.
was a part of me that worried, there was some definite friction between Milton and his daughter.
Yes.
And enough that if you didn't understand the situation, I was a little bit worried for his daughter during
Yeah.
that period that Jules would take care of his daughter. And
oh,
and that just took a really deep turn. And I just decided, I think you have to trust the filmmaker that it's not like a horror show.
Yeah.
But
I-
you have to trust him up to that point.
They
But
did.
that did kind of, if you were really following it in a linear manner, she was kind of a threat to him.
Yes, she was.
It also showed the two sides of dementia. So the person who has it and in the early stages, in this particular case, knows they're forgetting things. He's aware that he's declining. And
Yes.
that's really hard because in a way, he's got to know his daughter's right, but it goes against everything he wants. And I think
Right.
on the daughter's side, in a way, she'd love to have him live independently, but knows he can't and probably feels guilty that she can't be an adequate caretaker. So I really felt equally good and bad about both of them because I think they both expressed the two sides of what it's like to be a caretaker and to be a victim of the disease. And I thought that was really good. So I really liked the relationship as troubling and difficult as it was.
I also thought it was wonderful the way he said, well, I probably asked her to fix the television too many times. That although even when I was 30, I remember putting something rather strange in the freezer because when you have two kids and everything was busy and you're working, maybe that's a form of dementia, but I remember putting the car keys in the freezer.
Well, it's distracting, that's for sure. Yeah.
My roommate did that in college, so it's not necessarily a sign of
God.
dementia.
I put milk in the
early
cupboard once.
onset.
Yeah, that was good bringing all that up because we're certainly seeing a lot of that, of course, and we're all in that group now that are, you know, I remember my father-in-law said he didn't even buy green bananas anymore.
I
There's-
I liked the way that they at least addressed the possibility that Jules might mistakenly hurt someone who wasn't bad by,
Blowing his head up.
not understanding the full dynamics of a situation. And I thought that was
Yeah. Did anybody else suspect
important.
that young man when he came to the door? I knew he was going to do something
Oh,
bad.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And that
Oh, yeah.
really got to me because that's one of the things about old age that one talks about, being too trusting or whatever the situation is.
As soon as he said he wanted to,
Go to the
I
bathroom.
actually figured he was going in to her medicine cabinet to get whatever prescription she had, but instead of the jewelry. But in any case, I mean, that was pretty obvious. At least I hope I
Yeah,
wouldn't
I didn't see it
be
coming.
that dumb.
I didn't see it coming.
Either.
My husband always told me I have no situational awareness.
Mm.
So that's very true. He told me I'd never make detective.
See,
So,
I would know it and I'd let him in anyway because I'd feel too guilty not to let him in.
well, she put up the poster and here's somebody that wants to talk to her about, let's have her, let's connect here, and
Then you reserve a room at the library.
Yeah,
yeah.
really.
There you go.
That's
Sabrina.
public place.
I'm a big city girl.
Plexiglass room in a public place. Yep, that'll work.
I don't suppose, Barbara, you know anything about, I mean, I know you know a lot, and this is off of astronomy and physics, but, and it's probably kind of a downer too. It was to me when I saw as a sidebar one day that, China had, landed a probe of some kind on the moon. And I just thought, what are they going to do to the moon? You know, I mean, I know who we are. I know who we are as a species. We show up and we say, "Hey, I got here. It's all mine." You know,
I
the
don't know
whole
what they
thing.
want.
Yeah, and the Native Americans here said, how can you own land? We don't understand that. I
Well,
don't know.
remember, Apollo 11 planted a nice big American flag
Right.
on the moon. What do you think that was supposed to be communicating?
Well, to me, because I'll never make
claim this
detective and
for
I have no
Spain.
situational awareness, to me it was, hey, we got here. Look, here's a flag. I mean,
Well,
I don't, but I just got to thinking, oh my goodness, the moon, there's something there we could probably use for something.
well, the same thing happened in the Arctic. It's a little uneasy, but in the Antarctic, they have spheres of influence is the best I can, and it is uneasy, but they have kind of parceled things out by people who have touched base on this area. And
There's actually a treaty.
I'm far more concerned about Mars because of a kookaburra being able to afford his own penis rocket to the area. God, I've never seen something so obscene.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, that's another story for another time, just so we don't blow each other's heads off in the middle of it.
Did you guys talk about the article saying that there's signs of life on another planet that came out this week? Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I put the brakes on just a little bit. I tapped.
That's your job. That's okay.
Well, that
I
is,
don't think there's a lot materially to be gained from the moon, and getting there is so hard. I once heard that you could take the space shuttle into orbit and fill the cargo bay with gold and you'd still lose money. Space travel is really,
Trying to
really
schlep all of that back is hard.
well, thank you. You're reassuring me, Barbara, because it's kind of like ask the man who owns one, somebody who actually understands things.
India has
And-
landed on the moon. Israel has landed on the moon.
Right.
Russians have been, yeah. So it's not ours. It's never been ours. We can't keep it ours. So
No, I know. Isn't that old song? The moon belongs to everyone. The best things in life are for you.
And
Well-
going to Mars, it doesn't have a thick enough atmosphere to protect us from radiation in space. And so go ahead, let him go to Mars. He'll be dead in 6 months. Won't
Bill,
bother
you're a
me at all.
genius.
Yes,
Jill
but
is-
maybe
They'll
Barbara can
contaminate the place.
speak to this. I know they are looking for that Goldilocks planet, aren't they? The
Oh,
one that's kind of like here.
That's right.
Yeah, but once they find it, what are you gonna do?
Uh,
It's way out of reach.
how do
uh,
you get there?
Can't get there in a lifetime or many lifetimes.
There are maybe this many
Well.
planets within 10 light years. And if we could travel at the speed of light, we could get there in 10 years, but we can't. We probably will
So
take
far.
10,000 times longer
mhm.
at any reasonable way of getting there. So this many planets, 100,000 years, I don't think so.
Maybe we're protected there.
Before we
think we're on our
close
own.
out, there was a book or trilogy actually, I'd like to recommend if any of you are interested in extraterrestrials. It's called what is it? Three body
Three-body problem. Yeah.
Three-body problem. It's written by a Chinese author where they have very few fantasies. It's excellent. You have to read the trilogy. It's one story. You can't read it individually, but it's very worthwhile. I can't pronounce the name of the guy who wrote it. But it's really and it also brings into light what's going on Earth and that whole reaction and the interaction of the different countries here and how it's affected by somebody coming down here. It brings a lot of these things in a much less humorous way, although I think it has a really great surprise ending. So if you like a mystery, it's good there too. But I
Phil
really
read it?
highly recommend it.
Phil, you read it also?
I've only read the first book. I have to read
Oh,
books 2 and 3.
You do, Phil, because book 3 is like out of this world. Sorry.
Well, it's been a great lively discussion. Thank you all for showing up and weighing in on this beautiful spring evening during this time of year, Passover, Easter, very spiritual, strong time. And our next film we're going to watch, we're really literally going to come down to earth in every way, on our knees with our hands. The film that we'll watch for next month is The Gardener. It's about Henry Cabot. He has a beautiful garden that he's created somewhere in Quebec, I think, the Quatre Vents, and it's open 4 times a year. And it's just about gardening, but gardening with an amazing capacity to express. So, I mean, we're going to be down to earth. So if gardening's your thing, I hope you'll enjoy that. And also, we're going to have, and I've forgotten the name, I didn't write her down, but she was the
Crystal Miles.
Crystal Miles, yes, and she was in charge of the gardens here in Lawrence.
Oh, right.
So she's going to weigh in on that. But I think you'll find it very interesting if you get a chance to take a look at it. And nobody's head will blow up. But I've got to say, I was so glad that man's head blew up. I was really grateful.
And I'm so glad the cats did not. So
Yeah, and when she just grabbed him and embraced him, got me a little weepy. That's really sweet. So anyway, gosh, Barbara, thank you for being with us.
It was fun.
Thanks for keeping our feet on the ground, even though your study was the stars. We appreciate that. And thank you everybody for being here tonight. And go out and take a look at the moon tonight. Look at the stars. Yes.
Actually, about that, did they finally shut down the SETI project, or is that still ongoing?
I think
'Cause
it's
that was-
ongoing.
that-
Still going, I think.
It's private
Didn't
money.
Paul Allen leave it some money?
Sorry?
Didn't Paul Allen leave it a bunch of money?
Just don't tell
I don't know,
Trump.
but it's mostly been private, so it's probably
It's
Yeah,
private.
yeah, yeah.
It's not
everything else is
government funded.
Nice to know someone's, listening just in case.
Yeah.
Right, and it's nice to know. I remember too that record that they Carl Sagan, billions and billions, but the record that was recorded on gold and sent out with Chuck Berry.
Oh,
There was
Yeah.
that
on Voyager.
really,
I thought that was really amazing.
there was one of the science fiction movies where he says, "What are they doing here?" He says, "We invited them."
That's true.
I can't remember the title of the movie, but it was.
Yeah, they probably wanted more Chuck Berry. I don't know. Thank
Right.
you all for being here. Thanks for watching the movie and have a pleasant tonight. Remember where you are.
Yes.
It's a good
You're
spring.
you're
Barbara.
right there in that little piece of the Milky Way. Barbara, thank you so much for being
Thank you.